Yeah, I'm here today with Kathy Escobar. How are you doing today, Kathy?
I'm doing good,
Awesome.
Mark.
So we're glad to have you back on the show. So what's been happening since we last connected? How long ago was it? About a couple of months now, at least, I guess.
Yeah, I can't remember. I feel like it's been
It
longer
was
than
episode
that.
15, I think.
What did you say?
I think it was episode 15.
Yeah, so I don't know what episode are you on now.
I just released 31.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I was thinking that it was at least maybe 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah, yeah. So what's been happening? What have you been busy doing?
Oh gosh, so much happens in 3 or 4 months, but sometimes it's always the same. It's not, just always juggling life at the refuge. That's the faith community that I'm part of here in Denver, Colorado, and tons of kids. We've got a bunch of kids. And, just connecting with people in different ways that are wrestling with faith issues, both online and in real life. So that's always kind of, and then just trying to, work so hard. So those things are all happening.
I'm keen to ask, since we released the last episode, did your book sales go through the roof, or?
No. No.
That's wishful thinking about my podcast, my influence.
Yeah, no, sorry. At least I'm not aware that
Yeah, I want to have a system where you can say, for the people buy these books of these people I speak to, they can go, hey, I found it, I came across you on the Fundamental Escape. So we can track it, So did you get any, I'm curious, like, this could be a very awkward question depending on the answer, but did you have anybody that listened back to our conversation? And I'm curious, did you get any feedback from people at all?
I'm trying to think. This is what happens when it's far away in time. I'd have to go look on Facebook.
Yeah.
And see.
Because I know Reva posted it on her blog too.
Yeah. And then I know that there was that it got kind of like I got a little bit.
I think yours was the first comment on her blog.
Yeah, so I have no idea.
Yeah. No, that's okay. That's okay.
But always, the way that I always look at all these kinds of conversations is one, you never know.
Yeah.
And
I guess
it's like, it's an individual thing. It's sort of like the right people find it. What were you going to say? Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, a more practical question was for yourself. Like, after that conversation, did you have any kind of interesting reflections on the conversation at all?
Well, I think I remember this part of the conversation, and this is just true, and just seeing a little bit of your process too, is that there's just people enter into this sort of deconstruction, unraveling, phase shift. I mean, you can call it all different things at different places and at different times. And so the thing that everybody needs are other people who understand. So that's always, that's just always been the case. When I look back on, gosh, it's been a lot of years now. The refuge started 10 years ago in April, and that was kind of when I very first started finding blogs and connecting with people. And I'm still friends with a chunk of those people from way back then, very, very beginning. And it's amazing to see everybody's process. And then I was just reminded, like with you guys and what you guys are doing and the conversations you're having and the people that are connecting with your work is, they need to talk about it and to share their story and hear that we're not alone. And
it's like, I think by far the most popular episode I've had so far was the conversation I had with Paul Young about the shack, and because he blogged about it and it got like 28,000 hits or something ridiculous, which is amazing. But there was this sort of reflection that he made about the responses he got to, say, a book like The Shack, where he would have people come up to him and say, your book saved my life, sort of a thing, and you just hear, I could listen to him talk about these things for like a week straight. He's got so many stories, and I know you've got undoubtedly similar stories yourself in what you're doing in the conversations you're opening up. You did touch on the sort of origins of where you started blogging and things, and this is our last conversation we had. David, shout out to David. He's on hiatus doing amazing work for charity and things. But I was keen to hear on a more sort of personal level where you sort of began and like when you started blogging and your intent, and was it just kind of therapy for yourself out loud, or what has it evolved into, like from where it started to where it is now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, in some ways it's the same in that what I decided to do, I used to blog on the Refuge had a blog. Well, it still does. It's not super active anymore, but it was really active then, and it was interesting. We used to write kind of like a generic post that it didn't say like by Kathy. It was just like thoughts, and it was kind of like on the Refuge blog, and that felt safer somehow. And Carl and I would kind of edit them together, but pretty much one of us would write it. And then I decided, I guess it's been 8 years now, to write on my own, because there was something about owning it versus being underneath the cover. I was like underneath a cover of it not really being by me. And then we started saying by Kathy or by
taking ownership.
And so that was the next step, because blogging is a very vulnerable thing.
Oh yeah, I do it as well, and I completely agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. And podcasting, anytime you put yourself out there, it's got...
Yikes, you're telling me. I think podcasting is so much more intimate because there's tone of voice and you can sort of really pour your heart out. And it's, I've always been a very open, like what you see is what you get sort of a person. And I have no hesitation in saying the things I say, because I think if I feel a certain way about something, or if I'm hurting, or I, find solidarity or help or healing in something, I assume that at least one other person on the planet will as well.
Yeah, so, it's really true. And that's why I think people are really drawn to blogs. And, now podcasting is kind of becoming, sort of the next wave of technology. And so, but, I think what I always did on blogging, and what I try and still do, is I try to not think about who it's for. But just to do what it's like on my heart. And that's hard sometimes, because I'm a people pleaser in general. So
I want to talk about that. I do want to talk about that. It's interesting. Because in many ways, and people wouldn't believe this, but I am too. Like I have this funny, I was saying this to someone just recently, I have this personality that I'll, it's kind of, I think they call it like a, there's a term kind of like cry bully, and when it's like when you sort of you're bold and you're brash and you say these like really provocative things, and then you kind of hide away in this little cave like, why don't they like me?
It's a really vulnerable thing, and that's why I think it's a good practice. I always encourage people, if there's things that you want to say, just try and say them and put it out there. The other part that is kind of always lingered is I never did it just because I thought I had to. So it was only like if something comes. And so, like, I never just threw up stuff, and I still don't, It's kind of like, if it comes, it comes. And, the timing is always really is so funny on things, because, like, even today, I wrote a post over the weekend about conferences, because I have some issues with conferences, Christian conferences.
I've been to many a conference myself.
And so, I'm just writing it. And then, of course, it's like a day where some friends of mine that are planning this really big conference this year, and so right when it dropped, the same thing comes back, and and it was a good practice, because it's okay for both to exist. And I do try. I mean, my writing has changed a little bit. I was really angry 8 years ago, and I was really angry probably 6 years ago, pretty angry 5 years ago, and I'm still mad about some things for sure. So
you know what? So just to jump in quickly, like on the subject of being angry, I think we often talk about like, oh, I was angry, like that's a negative. I quite honestly think there's things we should be angry about, right?
I completely agree.
Real anger.
I mean, the reason why people stay angry is there's no place to express our anger. And so I totally think of it as a process. But the one thing that's different about like sort of just expressing your anger in a relationship versus expressing it online where it's written and documented forever, that if somebody, that's what's so vulnerable about it. If someone just only looked at that, then they don't know the whole spectrum, but it's exactly what it should be. I mean, I'm glad I said what I said, and I'm glad I say what I say.
Oh, absolutely. And so before I go any further, I want to bring this up as we talked about off air. We had I had a bit of a slight disagreement with somebody's point of view who made a comment on your blog a while ago. It was something along the lines of family and fathers and things like that. And obviously I grew up without my dad, and, I have issues around that I've started to talk a bit more about openly because I think it's quite important. And it's, I said to somebody, this is funny, this was like part of my undoing, I guess you could say. This was like the unraveling of the Mark who had all the answers and, everything like that. Was, growing up without my dad, I've always kind of had this sentiment like, I've never really felt like I missed out on anything. Like, my mum did an amazing job, and there's people who really respect my mum because she raised 3 boys on her own and things like that, and they honour her for that, and so do I, quite frankly. And I said this to a pastor of a church I was at the time. I said, I never really felt like I missed out on anything growing up without my dad. And his response just kind of fragmented me into a million pieces. And he says, you have missed out on a lot. You just don't know what you've missed out on, right? And I was just like, oh, crap. And it was just like this process that started in me of like this journey of like, I'm a little bit broken,
Yeah, it's a sensitive. It's good, and it's hard.
It's terrifying.
To kind of reckon with that, and it's always, I don't know. I just think it's really important and always helpful to kind of integrate all of those things into our story when the time is right.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and I've heard Rob Bell reflect on this idea where we sort of, it's so easy to look back and we kind of compartmentalize our life. Like, this was, me, I was Mark the Evangelist, and then I was like, lost in the wilderness, and I'm kind of still there, and, but you sort of compartmentalize, and he says it's so easy to sort of look back and despise where you've come from, and to say, oh, I wish I wasn't like this, or I wish I didn't go through this, or, things like that, and to sort of look down on yourself because of who you were. And you kind of get to this point where you're just like, I had to go there to be here. I had to go through this pain. I had to go through this process, this journey, sort of a thing. And it's unavoidable. And I think you, to me, as one of these people that is seeking authenticity and wants to be grounded in empathy and compassion and kindness. And as you said, I do want to talk about this people pleaser thing because I think it's incredible what can happen and where we can get taken. As they say, the road to hell is paved with good intention, sort of a thing. And, some of the subjects that have come up on my podcast is this idea, as I mentioned, this term social justice warrior and all this kind of thing where people are wanting, and I think this guy Milo Yiannopoulos, who I spoke to, referenced this and talked about his sort of take on it was, we have now a generation of young people who've grown up with absolutely everything handed to them. They've had iPods and Xboxes and all this kind of stuff, and they've had essentially, not generally speaking, not everyone's different obviously, but it's this kind of, loosely speaking, this generation that really have had nothing to rail against. And I think it's a human impulse to rage and to throw our fist up to the heavens and say, why this pain, why this? And it's almost like what we have now is this manufactured pain where people want something to be upset about or to rail against or to have these convictions around, and they're sort of struggling to find things. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that at all, but...
Well, I might see that a little bit differently, and I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I think it can be true. It's not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
By any means. But, I do think that people, I think on the whole, people aren't making up things to care about.
I could send you some links.
And so, yeah, it might be true. In my experience, that has not been the circle that I've been in.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the circle that I've been in, and I think that's why I remember this little interchange on the blog about somebody that posted kind of an honest story about their struggle with their dad, and you wrote a comment back, and, you know, there was just this little thing.
I think I said, at least you had a dad.
Yeah, and so, you know, and I'll be honest, I mean, I'll say it here, and, you know, I said it there, is that's not, that might be true for you, and it is true for you. But that's really dismissive of his story, and that's not being.
But this is the rub, though, isn't it? Not to be, and to be clear, like, I'm not trying to create controversy for the sake of it. I really am not. This is genuinely interesting conversation, and by all means, disagree with me, absolutely. But this is the struggle, though, isn't it? Because we are all in this together, and we are, like, my story and this person's story. I don't know them at all, but our stories are both equally valid. We both have pain, we both have issues, we both have a story to tell. And the question to me becomes, how do we navigate a world of conflicting narratives?
Well, I'll push back on you pretty hard and say that you didn't talk about your story. You dismissed his story.
No, you're right. Absolutely.
And so that's, in that moment, I mean, I think your story is super important, and I don't think that you need to, you just dismissed his story as a way of sharing your story. And that's not, those are two different things.
Quite honestly, no, you're right. Absolutely. And like, full disclosure, I knew what I was doing, Kathy. I knew, I wasn't ignorant to the fact that I was, like, kind of provoking. I don't hide that at all. Quite honestly. And I think, you know, whether that's like emotional raging, I don't know what you'd put it down to, quite honestly. But there was something in me that was kind of like fist up to the sky, like, you know, let's talk about this, like, you know, I'm important to, you know, whatever. I don't know. I mean, I think I don't, quite honestly, because I know you and I had a really interesting discussion afterwards, and I don't regret it because I really appreciated the conversation you and I had about it.
Yeah, well, it's a great example. I mean, you can't hit any of these things exactly right, but I think that a little piece of what would help with some of the I won't take such a you know, that's a sensitive story because they were talking about parent wounds, you know, and so that in that moment, and it wasn't this big emotional thing. I'm not saying that it wasn't, but I would definitely step in a moment like that for a reason. And and so the reason is because it shuts people sharing down. And I think that is and at the same time, I can't manage everybody sharing. I can't make sure everybody does everything.
The blog is not a safe space.
No, it's not how it works, but I do think we can get better at it. And I think that's a little piece of what is so nasty on the internet right now is people just let it rip.
Absolutely.
And I think that, I don't think it's all just being sensitive. I think it's bad behavior. And so that's what's kind of tricky is that, you know, we can all define bad behavior in a different way. But I know what shuts me down, and I know what shuts a lot of people I know down. And usually what encourages conversation are when people honor what somebody shares and says, even if you disagree, and you say, this is where I'm coming.
There's so much I want to say right now. I absolutely love what you're saying. I love what you're reflecting. I'm on board 100%. But the thing is, I would go back to what I said, this point of navigating these conflicting narratives, because how do we, you know, you can't, because what you're essentially, whether you realize it or not, what you're kind of advocating is this idea of almost policing responses and saying you're not allowed, or you should be kinder, or you should be more respectful. You can't, it doesn't really work like that, does it?
Well, you know what? In my living room, it does. And so,
I'm talking to a mother now. I'm terrified.
And so, you know, it does. And this is what, so I'm totally okay with people not doing that. I'm not saying you need to. I'm saying that I'm not gonna, I don't really actually monitor all that much, but when I see something like that really is dismissive of somebody sharing, I will say something. I've only done it a chunk of
time.
I don't want to be that's not me being a social justice warrior.
No, I would not. No, to be clear, I wouldn't label you that.
That's really just trying to honor, safety doesn't mean comfortable, but it is honoring what nurtures a conversation and keeps it moving, and what shuts it down.
But how do you honor, to ask a blunt question, how do you, in that context, how do you honor my story in that situation? And like you did point out, I didn't go into detail, obviously, but if I am in this space where I just want to rage, or, you know, there's people that could, you know, there's comments, as you say, on the internet that are much, much, much worse than anything I've ever said. Where do you, because isn't this the, and I'm talking about myself, and this may come off a little bit weird, but, you know, there are people out there that are, and I know you're awake to this reality, that there are broken, hurting, angry people who can't articulate sentences the best way possible, and who may just come across abrasive, or, you know, kicked to the edges, and they're sort of just railing, and you, the issue I have is that I've come from this space where I grew up in this religious context, started asking questions you're not supposed to ask, and essentially got kicked out of my tribe. So, and I know that you can relate to that, at least. So where do we go from here is my question.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, because I think what at least this is what I think you're saying.
Because I'm not a jerk, is my point.
Is that, you know, where's the place to just kind of let it flow and not have to edit everything to take care of everybody? And, or to sort of be in or out, you know, if I do this, is this going to cross some line, and then I'm kicked out of this, in the same way that might have happened with church. And that's why I think, you know, like, I don't know if you know anything about the Lasting Supper, but that's a group that my friend David Hayward facilitates, and it's a great group for people who deconstructed faith and are all over the place in that department. And, you know, what I love about it is, on the whole, people are really can share anything, and there's freedom in there, but at the same time, you can't be mean to other people. Like, that's not okay, as in, like, attacking. And so it's one thing to say, this is my opinion. Listen, this isn't about you. I just need to vent, or this is how I really feel. That is so different than going after somebody. And I'm not going to ever defend going after somebody, because I don't think that that's a healthy way to communicate, no matter what. But to vent and to go, I just need to go off on this and not worry that I'm going to get blasted for saying it. And, you know, I'm all for that, but it has a few of those little disclaimers at the beginning, because it sets up, listen, I'm just processing out loud. I'm trying not to edit. I'm trying not to take care of everybody. I'm trying not to worry about what everyone thinks. I just want to say this and not worry about it. You know, I don't think that that's unfair game, but it depends on where you do that too. You can't do that everywhere. And so, but finding places where you can, I think, is really important.
Yeah.
But then respecting that there's some places that it's too much. It's not good for that particular group or that particular medium. It's just not where you just vent. You know, that's part of the problem with the internet.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, and like you say, it's never going to be a quote-unquote safe space. So, yeah, I just wonder if, being that, as we talked about, that kind of people-pleaser kind of approach, that I think nobody wants to be a jerk, right? Nobody wants to be that guy, you know. I certainly don't, and I certainly have been many, many times. But where do we, because I'm about genuine connection. I want to have these, you know, genuine human, like, brokenness and all kind of a conversation, and it seems hard to me to process and to see where to begin with that. If you can.
Well, I think you're hitting on something, though, really important. There's only so much you can do online, and so,
well, yeah,
you could do a lot.
I value online clearly, because I've made some amazing connections online.
Yeah,
so
I think online is really great, and then I think online has its limitations, and so, you know, then that so much can get misperceived online, and, you know, that's what's tricky. But I do think that setting up some of the guidelines kind of help a little bit, because then it's just like, hey, we're all doing the best we can to be as honest as we can, and to not worry about stepping on everybody's toes all the time. And, you know,
some people, let's be honest as well, though. I mean, some people aren't doing the best they can. I'm not always doing the best I can.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, and I think when it comes to potentially hurting other people, we should try, and at least, I'm not saying do the best. We're all humans and we're going to screw it up, but going in, just going, I'm going to use this place to get out my shit, you know, like, I don't think that's fair to everybody if that's kind of not what the group is about.
But human, I mean, we're not, I mean, this is the point though, isn't it? We're not always fair. And I think, it's sort of setting up this unrealistic reality that just quite honestly doesn't exist. And I mean, to be honest, as I say, I didn't really want to dive too far into this, but it is interesting space, because this is where the shit hits the fan, as we say, the rubber hits the road. This is life. You know, life is pain, life is disagreement, life is chaos, and it's hard. It's not easy, and I do get very passionate about these spaces of conversation, because again, it really is, you know, you can't sort of dictate to someone else what they should value and of course in a blogging situation it's your space at the end of the day. I mean, you could have just simply chosen to delete my comment and just moved on, and you didn't do that, and that's great. I think it opens up at least a conversation, you know. So yeah. I don't know. It's I don't know where to go from here, to be honest. So it's an interesting thing, and it is I guess what I'm keen to hear a little bit about, you know, with what you're doing, and it's not until, you know, just to say, some of the most incredible and deep relationships I've formed in my life have come from incredible, deep disagreements. You know. You don't really know what you're made of or what a relationship is made of until you kind of have a fight about it. Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I think that's where the most juice can happen, but it's hard. I mean, it's hard, and I think so much does depend on commitment to the relationship. That's what's hard online. Is it's not in flesh and blood, and so, you know, that's what's tricky. Is when people know each other in real life, and somehow there's skin and eyes and hugs and connection, and, you know, you let yourself be really mad and let yourself up, and you know that other person is still going to be with you. You know, that helps so much. The online thing it's tricky.
It is tricky, but it's so ubiquitous now. It's so across the board, and it is the space we live in, for better or worse, and it's not going to change. It's not going back to, you know, I grew up in a world, you know, I remember the world without the internet, as do you obviously as well, but, you know, and this is the thing. I mean, I spoke to Shane Hipps about sort of the faith and technology, and he's got some amazing insights to that sort of conversation, and it's something that isn't going away, quite honestly, and I think we do need to sort of tackle these issues head on, because otherwise, I mean, for example, this is interesting space, and if you get bored, just tell me, we can shift gears. But, you know, Twitter, for example, have just employed a group of people to do with like harassment and like policing abuse online and things like that. And of course, you'd look at that on the outset and go, oh, that's great, well, that's needed. Clearly, there's terrible things that people tweet and say things, you know, obviously, there's horrible things that get said, and death threats and all kinds of nasty, horrible things, right? But as far as I'm aware, not one of the people on the team of this policy forming group believe in free speech on a basic level, which terrifies me, because I'm like, you know, there's Peter Rollins. Oh, by the way, I finally connected with Peter Rollins. It was amazing. But he has this quote. He quotes an Irish comedian, Dylan Moran, who says, "War is the inability to have conflict." You know, it's in these spaces where we're not allowed to rage and say things that may offend, that's when real violence actually erupts, you know?
Right. And I completely agree with that. I do not disagree that so much is truth and honesty and wrestling and practicing, showing up, practicing, saying this is where I think I'm at, and, honoring our differences, all those things. I'm 100% for it. My thing and where I will be glad to always step in is it does need to be facilitated to some degree if it gets nasty.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because there's enough harm being done in the world.
Yeah.
We need to do more. Then no one can learn a better way. So we have to learn, and you only learn by doing it. And that's in a recovery group, for example, if somebody crosstalks in a recovery group, it's not the end of the world. But someone says, hey, that's crosstalk. And, it's like part of what is said at the beginning, and it keeps safe. And so, and safe does not mean comfortable. Recovery groups are not comfortable. They're hard. And so, but what you have some guidelines. And I think that's where, I'll hold to. I'm all for people letting it rip. I'm all for really rich and meaningful and deep and all over the place, animated discussion. But if left on our own with people who are behaving badly, it screws the whole thing up, and it ruins the intent.
You're ruining the narrative. Yeah, no, I get it, absolutely. I can empathize with so much of what you're saying, but at the same time, my brain is still resisting a little bit. But when I spoke to Teresa Pasquale, I sort of reflected this idea of, hey, I've been through pain and rejection and heartache and loss and suffering and all this kind of trauma, and I've talked to her quite explicitly. I've had mental health issues and things like that. We did a whole episode on it, and it needs to be talked about. But then I sort of kind of wrapped up what I said by saying, oh, well, I know there's people that have been through worse, right? And then she kind of said, it's not really helpful to do that, to just kind of dismiss you. Because I think to bring it to a personal level, I think that's half the issue is not, because I don't really have an issue with anybody else dismissing my story. I personally couldn't care less, really. It's me validating my own issues and my own pain and really getting to the bottom of it. That, to me, is the issue.
Yeah, no, and I love what she said to you. I think that is really helpful.
She basically told me off.
Yeah, it's really helpful. We tend to do that, and we go, mine's not as this. We compare. All this comparative suffering is what Brene Brown calls it. And it's all this way to just not own, this is my story. And so back to kind of your thing on the blog, just to wrap
the blog.
It would just be great for you to have said, in my opinion, for me, this was my story related to my dad. And so when I hear other people talk about their dads, it makes me think of this.
Yeah.
And so that's it. And then there's an opening. There's an opening versus a closing. And I think that's what I think good conversations need to be about, openings.
But there's a testing as well. I think this is something I do, is that because I think I've been through huge amounts of rejection in my own life by people very close to me, and quite honestly, I've felt very misunderstood by most people in my life. And it's hard. And I think I do this thing where I purposely disagree because I'm I want to see how this person, are they still going to love me if I disagree with them, right? And I think that's possibly more about what I was doing than anything, and I think it was more about my connection with you, quite honestly, is Kathy still going to think I'm an okay person if I have a disagreement like this? I think that's maybe what it was about.
Well, and I love what you're saying, because I think that's our humanness, and it's good, and it needs. And one of the things that makes me think of an old blog from a long time ago, a few years ago, called Corrective Experiences, and so that's a psychology term, but I love it related to faith things too, because so many people have had bad experiences. And so when we can have a corrective one, and we're sure it's going to happen again. So, you know, we're sure that when we try again, the same thing is going to probably happen. And sometimes it does. But then sometimes we have a corrective experience where when we tell our real story, someone says, thank you so much for sharing that. Or, you know, I love you still. I don't see you that way. And there's no shame, or, you know, just doesn't say anything, just hugs you, where you have to say, you know, well, the Bible says, and blah, 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 you know, all these things. And, or one-ups, you know, all kinds of things that tend to shut people down. And so, and I think, you know, I really like what you're saying, because there's a piece of, we're always healing in relationship. And so, and I think that test, I mean, I know a lot of people in my life, and it's happened to me too, is testing rejection as a big core message for me. People only will be with me if I'm nice and do what they need me to do. And so then when I don't, that's been a piece of standing up for myself. And, you know, it's gone both ways. Sometimes I've stood up for myself and I've lost the relationship. Other times I've stood up for myself and it's strengthened the relationship. And that's a corrective experience.
Well, I mean, in the name of vulnerability, I mean, I spoke to you a little while ago. I spoke to somebody online who had been going through some pretty significant kind of heartache and pain, and they'd broken up. It was like a lost relationship. And my stories, you know, I'm a singleton. Like I've never been in a relationship officially. I'm just like, you know, that's my reality, and that's fine. I think you get to a point where you kind of just get used to it, and you kind of like, this is easy, and I don't want to change. But I did, you know, admittedly, I liked someone for a very long time, and we were friends, and not going to go into tons of detail, but I inevitably, this was a number of years ago, and I had no indication or feeling that I knew this person only saw me as a friend, and I knew that there was no reciprocal feelings in that level at all. But I told this person how I felt because we were friends and we hung out all the time, and I felt that they deserved to know the truth, right? That was the only impulse I had to sort of tell them. And again, this was another big part of my undoing. I think it ties into what you said about the corrective, what was the name of that blog? Corrective...
It's just called Corrective Experiences.
Yeah. So I think it ties into that, where I had this narrative in my head. I had this impulse, this belief that when I told this person how I felt, that they were just going to absolutely reject me, right? I was like, they're never going to want to talk to me again. They're just going to be like, I'm done with you, Mark. This is awkward and weird, and let's just, like, we're done, right? That's what I told myself. And the reality of what I got was the absolute opposite. This person was nothing but kind, empathetic, compassionate, still liked me as a friend, still wanted to hang out, and that made it so much harder, if anything, because I was like, you didn't play by the rules. You didn't fill the narrative that I was writing. You know, like you didn't play your part, and it really disrupted me. It really messed me up. I would say now, in the best way possible, looking back, but at the time, that was a trauma. I was like, that was traumatic, because I was like, you didn't give me what I expected, you know, and it's hard.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And it is disrupting, but usually those disruptions, at least in my life.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's not something I wanted to all the time, but I think, you know, I feel quite comfortable reflecting these things to you, because you come across very compassionate, empathetic to me, and you feel like safe kind of thing, you know? Which is great, and I think you're very deliberate about that, which is awesome. And yeah, so so in conclusion to the whole blog thing, maybe I shouldn't have clicked send on that one. Let's just.
But that's okay that you did. You know, that's the truth. And you stayed in, and you know, we had a little interchange. It was small. It was, you know, and this is a good example of where it is. That's where I don't believe. Like that's. Would never just delete a comment. I mean, I deleted comments. It's only been, you know, on two hands of what was just so outrageous, and I was like, I'm not having it on that. Yeah. And but that's on the whole, I don't do that. I just don't. And the reason why is because I do believe in free speech. Good. And so believe in, we're all human, and we're just practicing, and we need places to just show up as best we can. say things that we thought were a good idea before we hit send.
Yeah.
And so I really do think that.
So just to, maybe this will change gears a little bit, but so the guy Milo Yiannopoulos I mentioned, he's doing this tour around these college campuses and things about free speech. Now Milo, to put context around who he is, he describes himself as a gay Catholic conservative, okay? He doesn't fit the narrative at all, you know? And so he's doing these talks on free speech and things like that. And he did this talk at Rutgers University, which is in New Jersey, I believe. And he was talking for about half an hour, and these girls got up after he was almost finished. They were going into like a Q&A session. And this is on YouTube. You wouldn't believe this until you saw it. It's on YouTube. Honestly, it's crazy. So these girls go up, and this one girl says, "This man speaks hate," you know? And I kid you not, Kathy, they started smearing their faces with red paint in protest. It was one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. I was like, this is like Lord of the Flies. Like, what is actually happening right now? And this is nuts. And I say this to make the point that there are some people who like, not the example we talked about, the blog, that is a legitimate story, obviously, but there clearly are clear examples of people making up reasons to be offended and not listening to the other side and creating this world where we're not allowed to be disagreed with, and I need a safe space from your opinion that is not my own. So that is a reality that is on our planet in 2016.
Yeah, it is. And it is. And you know, and this is what's so I don't have any easy answers for any of it, because there really aren't. So help me out. What is his name again?
Oh, Milo Yiannopoulos.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got to look him up.
Yeah, he is one of the most fascinating people. I said, this is how I opened my conversation with him. I said, Milo, are you one of the most interesting people on the planet right now, or have we all just become incredibly dull and boring? Because this is the thing, right? Because he's this gay Catholic conservative, he does not fit the narrative of this liberal left kind of ideology. And they hate it. They get so infuriated with him because they can't write him off as, you know, all these labels like misogynistic, sexist, racist, blah, 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 blah. They kind of can't, their ammunition against him doesn't work. And I love watching it, quite frankly.
Yeah, okay, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, it's opening up some interesting space, and it's great. And I'm glad to hear you say that you're an advocate of free speech. It doesn't surprise me to hear you say that, given what you do. But it's great. It's so important. It's so cool. So we have been chatting for a while now. Maybe we should wrap things up. I don't know where you want to wind down. If you have anything to promote, are you writing any new blogs, or you're not writing any books or anything, are you?
No, I'm just blogging and taking care of things at the refuge, and that's really where my focus is right now, and it's good. It's actually really good. And then I'm getting ready to start a new podcast, actually, which will be fun.
Oh, wow.
A totally different format.
Cool. What's the format? Is it like interviews, or is it like...
It is with my friend and co-pastor at the refuge. It's called Faith Circus.
Nice.
And,
I love it already.
Yeah, so no, we're going to have fun. So we'll see. I mean, we've recorded a couple episodes.
Oh, cool. That is super cool.
Yeah, so that is one project. That doesn't feel hard. Like, we haven't worked super hard.
So where did the podcast idea come from? We didn't give you the idea, did we?
Oh, no. I mean, I've got a whole bunch of friends podcasting. And I think you can't, in our situation, I mean, that's what's different than a blog. If you have two voices, and we're basically just trying to have some of our hard conversations and then invite people into those conversations, because a big piece of our story is living with the differences in tension in community. We did a series with the Work of the People. I don't know if you know about the Work of the People. Was that the video
series? I think we talked about that last time.
Yeah, you know what? I think maybe then we had done it, but it wasn't out yet. But Work of the People just in general has amazing stuff on their site. And so they've got great interviews and all kinds of things. They're usually just single person. So my friend Travis is the creator of the Work of the People. It's my favorite. I love their stuff. And they've got a whole series. In fact, I just watched one because I did the discussion guide for one on faith and doubt. Peter Rollins had one of the videos in there.
Oh, he's amazing. He's amazing.
Greg Boyd and Rachel Held Evans and Sarah Bessie. It was a good series. There were six. I'm just rambling off the top of my head right now, but it was really good. And they've got these discussion guides, and so you can kind of watch the film and then talk about it. Well, Carl and I did one where we're actually both of us together, and then it's a discussion guide for 6 weeks, 6 videos. That groups can kind of process on ways to actually have some of these hard conversations about being different but not dividing, because that's what's happening with everybody. Everyone's just dividing. So that's kind of fun. I don't know. The podcast is probably, I don't know, it's probably a month or so out still, but it's been a fun and not very hard project to do, and so I'm glad that you made me think of it, because I keep forgetting.
You're rubbish at promoting yourself, Kathy.
I'm rubbish.
We talked about this last time.
I'm so bad at it, but I really, I'm not.
You need to hire me on your marketing team.
The thing about it is that I really know so many people want to hold space for some of these hard conversations and just don't know how.
Yeah.
So part of us is just doing that. And then we're just processing some things out loud about theology and practice. I mean, we agree on a lot of things too, but we disagree on a lot of things also.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for connecting again. It's been amazing and insightful. And on a personal note, it's been very helpful.
Oh, good. Well, it was fun to have a conversation.